What's going on, you guys? It's Sophia. I recently posted a TikTok about these t-shirt pants I made and I got so much feedback asking for a tutorial. So that's what this is. Let's just get right into it. Apologies for the noise. My neighbors sound like they started their band practice. I guess we'll have some nice background noise. Okay, so here are the materials that we're gonna need, guys. Number one, obviously the t-shirts. I'm using 6. I would definitely use at least 6, but you can also use more. The more you use, the more color variation you can have. So, you know, go crazy, get creative. And obviously, as you can see, I chose t-shirts with some print on them that I thought other shoppers probably wouldn't want, because the idea of this is to put clothes to use that would maybe just end up in a landfill. So these are the ones I got. It was also half off everything day at my local thrift store, so I went crazy in there. The shirts already started at only like $2 or $1, so I got them for 50 cents, $1. Super good deal. So yeah, those are the t-shirts. That's the color scheme we're going for. Next, you're gonna need a pair of pants that you are willing to part ways with, because we are going to be cutting them up. The requirements is that it has an elastic waistband. It's either straight leg or wide leg, and they fit you in a way that you like. So these ones fit me. There's a hole in them though, and I just don't really wear them very often. So something like that would be perfect. Next up, we are going to need some elastic for the waistband. I like to use 2-inch. You can also use 1-inch, but I prefer the 2-inch. Next, we're gonna need our rotary cutter. Very important. We're also gonna need some pins, tiny scissors. I use binder clips, but you can use those sewing clips as well. We're gonna need a tape measure. We're going to also need a cutting mat. I have 2, a big and little, but whatever you have works. And then also a pocket template. Now, I made this myself. I will go over how you can make one. We're also going to need a serger, an iron, and our sewing machine. I will say you can do it without a serger. However, I find patchwork much easier with a serger and cleaner, but I will explain how you could do it if you only have a sewing machine. So collect your materials and let's get started. So we are going to take our sacrificial pants and start cutting up the inseam, go up that crotch seam and go around the waistband, and then to meet that other butt seam going down, and then you're just going to keep that one leg. You could use the other leg for scraps or reuse the waistband, but we're just going to use that one side and lay it out flat. And now we're gonna prep these t-shirts. I just cut both sides all the way through to the sleeve hole, and then you're able to just lay it flat, and I find it much easier to work with. So we're just gonna do that with all our t-shirts. To create the actual pants, we're gonna need that rotary cutter and tape measure. I'm starting by just creating one big rectangle to base my measurements around. I'm gonna start from the bottom and line that side edge up 1 inch out from the point of the crotch. Follow that line all the way down, and that's where I'm going to start my leg. I do it this way to create a wide leg effect. However, if you just want a more straight leg look, you could follow more closely to the pants and just give it about 1 inch seam allowance outside that pattern. I'm also making sure that first patch goes about 1 inch over the pattern at the bottom, because that's going to get taken up into the hem. And now to start that next patch, I'm just measuring the length of my first one so I can match that up, because I prefer to do my patches in rows. It makes the sewing much easier. After getting that length, I'll line it up and make sure I have about 1 inch of overlap with the 2 patches. This is just something I like to do with patchwork. I find it makes the whole process a lot easier to have larger seam allowances. And after I do that, I'm going to get the width by going up from the crotch point again, following the line, and cutting through. And once again, this is for the wide leg effect. So now I can pretty much follow this outline up the 2 sides until I get to the crotch point. So I'm just gonna get those patches laid down. And once I get to the point, I'm going to find out where it is. I also like to just use my hand to feel over the fabric where it's at. And then I use my finger as a measurement to do about a finger's width seam allowance right outside of that pattern. And I do this on both sides, just feeling where the pattern is underneath and following along that curve. So now when I'm at the waistband area, I'm gonna wanna add an additional 4 inches of fabric to the top because I'm using a 2-inch waistband that's gonna get sewn on and then folded over. So I'm just measuring what length of patches I should have, and going up from the end of the pattern, I'm gonna add 4 inches. And just like I did with the curved edge, I'm going to feel underneath for the pattern and use my finger as a measurement to cut along that edge. Obviously, be careful you don't cut your finger. Those rotary cutters are so sharp. So now we are going to combine all the patches. I like to separate all my rows, and I'll show you we're going to take each patch from each row and go right side to right side and serge along that right edge. You could also totally use a straight stitch with a sewing machine for this part. I just like the clean edge a serger gives. And for anyone curious, I'm using a 4-thread serge, and my tension is 4-3-3-3. And if you've got a 3-part row, you can just fold over and serge one side, and then take both of those pieces, fold them over right side to right side, and serge that edge as well. So now we're sewing each row together, and we're just once again gonna flip upwards right side to right side, serge all along that edge, and just keep going row by row and adding it to the leg. So now that that whole leg is done, we are just going to flip our pattern over and do everything all over again. I'm not sure if flipping the pattern is actually necessary. It's just like one of those things that I do because I feel like it's the right thing to do, but it's up to you guys in the end. I would say the patchwork is the most time-consuming part of this project, so once you get through this part, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're getting there. I just wanted to make a note of this. This totally could be self-explanatory to you, but just in case it's not, you can actually, if your row has some vertical as well as horizontal patching going on, you're just gonna right side to right side those patches, serge that, fold it back open, and then right side to right side that whole thing against the bigger one and serge that end. So now we're gonna seal up these legs. I'm just folding them in half and lining up the crotch points. If you have a little extra fabric at the bottom of the pants, it's not too big of a deal, but I try to have the crotch part lined up. So I'm gonna go ahead and serge top to bottom for each leg. Now I'm just getting these pants right side out and laying them flat, just cutting off some excess fabric at the bottom to even out the hems. And I'm going to get that crotch seam down. How I do this is you can see that there's a small curve and there's a big curve. That back layer has a small curve, so that means it's the front. That top layer has a big curve, so that means it's the back. So once I have those lined up, I will take the seam we just created down the leg and I will line those up and pin them. That's going to be my first pin. Then I'm just going to follow along all the way up one side of that curve, and once I'm finished there, I'll follow up with usually like 2 or 3 pins on the other side as well, and you should have the whole crotch seam pinned together, and then you're just going to serge all along there. So once you have that seam done, you'll really be able to see the pants in their almost full form. It's just going to be some finishing touches now. So how I get my waistband measurement is by measuring around my waist with my tape measure, marking that. I'm going to take that number and I'm going to subtract 2 inches. So for me, that's going to be about 30 and a half. And since it's an elastic waistband, there's some wiggle room. Anywhere from 30 to 30 3/4 is good. So I put this waistband together by just overlapping the edges just about maybe 1/4 of an inch and using this zigzag stitch. And to be honest, I just go crazy on sewing this down. I'll go back and forth, securing each end, and then just do like 2 back and forths usually. Just cleaning up the waist of the pants, and then I'm going to need my pins. So I'm going to take my waistband and put it inside the pants, and I'm going to stretch it to make sure the pants are evenly dispersed throughout the waistband. And when it's fully stretched out, I'm going to use my finger as a marker and place my first pin there. I'm going to keep stretching it out again, put a pin in the opposite side, and I'm just going to keep doing that until I have I usually do around like 6 to 8 pins. And I try to keep them evenly spaced because I use them as markers while I'm sewing down the waistband. So when I'm serging these together, I like to put one hand on one pin and the other hand on the next pin, stretch out that length, serge that, and then go on to the next pin, stretch that out, serge that length, and so on until I go through the whole waistband. So after that's down, we're going to want to fold the waistband inwards, and I like to make sure that the fabric is evenly spaced out over the waistband so it doesn't get too bunched or too spread out in one area. I try to keep the fabric evenly dispersed because it makes it a lot easier to sew. And just like the last step, I'm going to put about 6 to 8 pins in the waistband, and I'm going to have the same method when I'm sewing it down by pulling the length between 2 pins and straight stitching that all along the waist, and yeah, the waistband's done. So after making sure the fabric of the leg is even, I'm going to fold it up 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch and iron that down. I'm going to once again fold it up that same length and iron that as well. I'm going to make sure to do that to the other leg, and then I'm just going to get a straight stitch and the legs are done. So now to add pockets. This is my pocket template, and the measurements I used to make this is around 11 inches by 7 inches. Obviously, it depends on how deep of pockets you want. You don't have to. I just make sure to have a rounded bottom and a right angle for the top left. It could be the top right too. It really doesn't matter. So using what's left of the t-shirts, I'm going to use this template and cut out 4 of these shapes. You can choose to do each color different. You can try to make them all the same color. You can use a totally different t-shirt. Just depends on the vibe you're going for. I went for this multicolored kind of vibe. You're gonna make sure you have 2 layers for each pocket and keep the points together. And then we're gonna get ready to sew them. I took a moment to make sure you're able to tell which is the front and which is the back of your pants, because sometimes I struggle with this. But basically, if you look inside the pants, you're going to find where the crotch point starts, and then you're going to look for that small curve and that big curve like I mentioned earlier. The small curve always means the front, the big curve means the back. You are going to make sure you lay them down front facing up, and we are going to cut out some holes where the pockets are going to be. We're going to go in. I use about a thumbnail width to know where I want to put that first snip. I pinch the fabric, just cut a tiny hole, and that's when I put my measuring tape down, and I start at that seam on the elastic waistband. So I want that pocket to start 1 inch below the waistband, and then I'm going to cut down until I reach 6.5 inches. So the hole is actually going to be 5.5 inches. And then I'm going to do that same thing on the other side. Next, I'm going to line up the 2 layers for one of the pockets, making sure the point is going upwards. I'm going to make sure the pocket is about a finger's width above where the hole is. And then I'm going to also measure a finger's width below the hole and mark that with a pin on the pocket fabric. And I'm also going to do that same thing for the other side. Then I'm just going to serge all around the edge of the pocket, starting at that point and ending where that pin was. And I'm going to do that for both. Next, I'm just flipping the pockets right side out, and we're going to attach them. We're going to do this by flipping inside out just that upper part of the pants. We're going to find the hole on the inside of the pants. We're going to take the pocket, bring that open side through the hole from the outside of the pants into the inside. So it's going right side to right side. And then I like to just flatten it out and make sure the upper seam and lower seam are aligned with the top and the bottom of the hole. And then we're just going to serge all around. This part can definitely be tricky, especially with a serger, so take your time. But once you do that, you're just going to do the other side. And personally, I like to do an extra straight stitch around the pocket seams because it's just an area that's going to experience heavy use. So I just like giving it that extra strength. And the pants are complete. I think they look so beautiful, but let's do a little try on. We have successfully turned some thrifted t-shirts into pants. Alright guys, this completes my video today. I hope this was helpful for you. I'm still a beginner when it comes to tutorial videos, so if anything was unclear or if you have any questions, please drop them below. I will get back to you and do my best to clear things up. And to finish out, I'm just going to read a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson from his essay, Self-Reliance. It's one of my favorites. The other terror that scares us from self-trust is our consistency, a reverence for our past act or word, because the eyes of others have no other data for computing our orbit than our past acts, and we are loath to disappoint them. This is a really awesome essay. I totally recommend reading the whole thing. Definitely about coming into yourself, expressing who you really are, regardless of outside noise. So yeah, if that's something you're interested in, I recommend. But once again, thanks for watching this video, guys, and I'll see you next time.